I've got an incredible show for you today, my friend. I got to sit down in person and have a chat with Erling Kagge, who is a man of many firsts. He is a legendary explorer and adventurer. Back in 1990, he reached the North Pole without support as part of a two-man team. They were the very first people to do that. Then in 92-93, he did a solo unsupported expedition to the South Pole. He was the first person to ever do that. 50 days walking alone across Antarctica. Can you imagine that? No contact with anybody. And that's one of the topics that we cover in this wide-ranging interview. We talk about silence. I mean, he spent 50 days in silence, no radio contact, by himself, walking across Antarctica. Imagine that. Put yourself there. It's an incredible physical feat, of course, but also mentally. What's it like to be in silence for that long? I couldn't wait to talk about his book, Silence in the Age of Noise, and why silence is such an important part of our lives as humans. And we talk about a whole bunch of other stuff in this interview. You know, he also climbed Mount Everest, by the way, in 94, which made him the first person to complete what's called the 3 Poles Challenge on foot. And back in 2010, he did a 5-day long walk through the sewers of New York to the Atlantic Ocean. In 2012, he walked the entire length of LA's Sunset Boulevard. He's a walker. I'm a walker too. I love to walk. So we do talk about walking. We talk about silence, travel, of course, and so much more. Let's get into it. Thanks for being here and welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
You're listening to the Zero to Travel podcast, where we explore exciting travel-based work, lifestyle, and business opportunities, helping you to achieve your wildest travel dreams. And now your host, world wanderer and travel junkie, Jason Moore.
Hey there, it's Jason with ZeroToTravel.com. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for hanging out, letting me bring a little travel into your ears today. This is the show to help you travel the world on your terms, to fill your life with as much travel as you desire, no matter what your situation or experience. You heard my enthusiasm at the top of the show. I mean, I get to sit down with a legendary, iconic explorer and adventurer. I never in my wildest dreams thought I'd be able to have conversations with incredible people like Erling Kagge, but through this podcast, and thanks to you in this community for listening and keeping this show going for the last 7+ years, I get to have these conversations. I'm so fortunate, and I'm so excited to bring you this one. I mean, you've heard about Erling's accomplishments, and I thought, you know, he's written this book called Silence in the Age of Noise. It is a very noisy world right now, as you know, and I do think silence is one of the most undervalued and underappreciated, I don't want to say things we can do as humans. Give ourselves silence. You know, we're always busy, a lot of us. We're consuming a lot. We can listen to audiobooks and podcasts and read, and there's so much information out there, so much knowledge, and it's so exciting to learn and to take in knowledge. But there's a lot of wisdom to be gained from silence as well. And if you're like me, sometimes it's a struggle to not only find silence, but then to give yourself that gift, right? Sometimes I go on a long walk and I'm thinking, oh, this would be a great place to just have some silence and cruise around. And I've been doing that lately. But sometimes it's nice to listen to a podcast or listen to some music you love. And it might be harder to choose silence over, let's say, entertainment or education or information or whatever. But I've never regretted that choice when I choose to walk in silence and be alone with my thoughts. I get more breakthroughs, ideas, things kind of come out of nowhere. It's a magical thing. So there's a challenge I issue to you at the end of this podcast. You can stick around for that. You're also going to hear one of my favorite Norwegian words. And of course, we talk about silence and walking and travel and adventure and all this fun stuff. I did sit down in person with Erling. This was pre-COVID. I've been sitting on this interview for a while, and I just needed to get it out there, and I couldn't wait to bring it to you. So please enjoy my conversation with Erling Kagge, and I will see you on the other side, my friend. I have the honor of sitting here with one of the world's most accomplished explorers here in his office in Oslo. It's a publishing company, Kagge Forlag, and we're surrounded by books. And I said when I came in, this is like I had died and gone to heaven or something, because I love to read. We're going to talk about one of his books today and a lot more. I'm sitting here with Erling Kagge. Welcome to the Zero to Travel podcast, my friend.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you.
Honored to have you here. So everybody just heard about some of the incredible expeditions you've done, and I'm wondering, just on the spectrum of adventures, where parenting ranks for you.
I think it's you have the North Pole, the South Pole, and then the Brits came up with a kind of expression, a third pole, because obviously they didn't get to the North Pole, South Pole first, so they invented the third pole, Everest.
Is that how it went down?
Yeah, I think that's the story.
Yeah,
and to try to crack a joke, like to become a father is the fourth pole.
Oh yeah,
okay. By far the easiest, the most pleasurable to achieve, but also the most demanding afterwards. That's for sure.
Yeah, because you have 3 daughters, right?
Yeah, and an expedition kind of it starts maybe a year or two before you actually go on the venture. With preparations, and you are away for a month or 4, or a year maybe if it's a sailing trip, and then you get back home and you do some work afterwards, and then it's finished.
Yeah. But
with the daughters, I'm sure with sons too, but I haven't tried. It's kind of an ongoing venture.
How old are they?
Today they are 17, 20, and 23.
Okay.
So I'm very happy by the way they're living, but as a parent, you're always a little bit worried.
So you're entering a new phase in your life, kind of the empty nest, as we say in the States, where the kids are leaving, and all of a sudden it's...
Yes, I'm kind of surprised that I miss my daughters as much as I do.
Yeah.
Nobody's living home now. The youngest one is moving back home this summer.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's kind of strange to be alone in a house.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd imagine. Do you have any advice for me? Because I got 2 little ones. I'm on the other end of it.
All I can say it's you have some entertaining, tough, challenging and loving years ahead.
Were they around, or some of them around, when you were doing some of these expeditions to the poles?
Not the poles, no. But I kept on doing lots of outdoors.
Yeah.
So and they seem to love outdoors too, which is very satisfying for me, because I think it's this huge misunderstanding today that you almost only have to relate to man-made environments. That's, of course, super naive. Mother Earth is 4.5 billion years old. So the whole idea that you're not going to spend time in nature and listening to Mother Earth is very naive. So, I really hope my daughters will develop, a close relationship to nature. Maybe not as close as me, or, maybe even closer, but still, just be aware that, if you're going to explore the world, explore yourself, it's not sufficient to look onto a screen.
Yeah, it does tap into something else when you're in nature, I think. And unfortunately, there's some people that they just grow up, they don't ever have the opportunity to, say somebody growing up in New York City or something, and their parents just never take them out to experience nature.
Yeah, but we always use US as a bad example, but if you look to England, for instance, as I write about in my book Walking, 5% of kids in UK are not doing outdoors at all.
Yeah.
They're inside almost all the time. They're inside during the during school time, and then they go, get home, and they're inside all afternoon, evening, and in the weekends.
Yeah.
Ask the parents, say they understand it's not a good idea, but somehow they don't do anything about it. So you think about in society who's spending the least time doing outdoors, and at least I was thinking that would be prisoners, but most prisoners will be out for 1 hour every day.
Right.
And then you have all these kids that are either not outside at all or less than an hour.
Yeah. It's one of the things I love about living in Norway is the value that Norwegians place on nature. Taking my kids to the barnehage, which is the daycare. I don't know how it is in the States because I haven't had that experience, but they go out in all kinds of weather, right?
Yeah, I think that's quite Norwegian actually.
Yeah.
This whole idea that in kindergarten that kids spend so much time doing outdoors, and also as I say, if it's raining or if it's snowing, they also they still have to do outdoors.
Yeah.
And most parents find it kind of a routine to send them with the clothes you need to be outside most of the day, even when it's raining and snowing.
Yeah.
And I think that's that's a really good side of Norway.
Yeah.
But when you look at adults, in Norway too, they they to a great extent live their lives through screens.
Yeah, we're going to talk a bit about that and your book, Silence in the Age of Noise, which I read, and I said, Erling's right in town. I got to come sit down and talk to him about this. I know it sounds counterintuitive to talk about silence, but that's, this is a podcast. So on the parenting side, just one more question around that. When you started having children, I know, like for me personally, I sort of became more cautious with my travels. I kind of started thinking about the risks I took a little differently. And I'm just curious because you've done some extreme things, obviously. And I'm wondering if that was at all the same experience for you.
One way, yes, because I think as a parent, obviously, you have a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
Also to try to stay alive. But having said that, you're also going to be a role model for your kids. And some of you need to follow your own path to try to fulfill some of your own potentials. So I wouldn't criticize people, going on kind of extreme expeditions, although they have kids at home.
Yeah.
But in general, yes, of course, at least for me, until I got kids, I felt like the most important human being on earth. And then, it's really, really healthy to become a father. And I'm sure it's also a mother, because then you understand you're not the most important person in the world.
Yeah.
And, obviously kids are more important than you and also many other things. So for me, that was an important lesson. And of course, that's also kind of influence your priorities and your choices in life.
Yeah. There is a line, right? Like you kind of mentioned, it's you still want to live true to yourself because that inspires them in a way.
Yeah.
The actions speak louder than words, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I said earlier, we were joking, I wasn't going to make you sit through all your accomplishments here in a long introduction, but you know what you've done, and everybody listening does, because I went through them. But when you hear somebody read off the things that you've done, like what kind of images or memories or things come into your head?
I don't think too much about what that has been in general. For many years, I hardly spoke about my expeditions at all because I was so fed up. People tend to ask you, is it very cold at the North Pole? That kind of questions, which, but I'm not laughing because I think it's kind of, I'm also very happy people are interested.
Right, that's true. Learning about the world.
Questions, but of course, when you had the same questions many times for a long period, you get, fed up.
Yeah, for sure.
But today, I changed my attitude, actually. I'm thinking back on those years, and somehow they're still going on. I'm very happy about what I did. Yeah. And I'm also proud of what I did. So, but, in daily life, I have a busy job. We talked about family. I'm writing books. I'm very much into contemporary art. So I don't have that much, time or energy and to think about what has been.
Yeah. How much has your relationship to travel changed, just travel in general? Was that always something you were interested in, or was it just a byproduct of having to go on these expeditions, so you needed to travel?
I always like to, move. I think, we all, we're born, we're always, every kid is wondering what's hidden beyond the horizon.
All right.
And I think every kid would like to have more space around herself or himself. So I think that's how we're born. And of course, it's also in our language that, when we move, we're being moved. And emotion. So we have the same in Norwegian, and you have the same in Sanskrit. So this is something deep among humans that, somehow we need to move and we need to explore.
Yeah. Do you still feel the need to move?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like, when was your last trip? Do you still travel extensively in that way, or is it a bit different?
I wouldn't extensively, but although it's hard to see any snow in Oslo, just now in this winter.
Yeah, this winter's been crazy, huh?
I found some snow yesterday.
You did? Whereabouts? Can you tell me?
Cross country in Mylla, and the northern side of Nordmarka.
Okay.
And cross country skied for a few hours.
Nice.
Fantastic. This morning I walked to the office. Beautiful. Some of the secrets to have a good life is to keep your pleasures simple.
Right.
And obviously I didn't come up with that advice. It's advice that has been, going on for a few thousand years. I think, any advice that lasted for more than 1,000 years, we should take seriously.
Yeah, that's good advice. Traveling around and then, like you said, just enjoying the simple pleasures, not being on the move as much, and understanding for me that, wow, maybe, traveling, like what percentage of it is more of a mindset of like, hey, I'm walking to the office today. I'm on like a little adventure now, just enjoying the present moment. You can almost get that same feeling that you have when you're kind of moving in a new place, if you're in the right mindset, at least for me.
Absolutely. I think, it's very much come down to yourself. I think some of the biggest mysteries, in the world will always be in your own backyard.
Yeah.
So, but of course, that's a very old story that, people traveling, sailing the oceans, climbing the mountains, walking far, cross-country skiing far away. And eventually when you return back home, you find some of the answers to the questions you asked yourself.
Yeah.
Before you started on the adventure. That's, I think that's quite often how great stories end.
I always like the saying, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's paradise is where I am, as Milton wrote. And I think that's a very good kind of, idea that paradise is not ahead of you or nor in the past, but, somehow paradise is where you are, or it can be where you are.
What do you like about walking? I love to walk.
It's easy to forget, but, some of the greatest pleasures in life are for free. The most important things in life don't have any lasting forms. And I think walking is a good example to show that, it's you can do it for free, and it doesn't have a lasting form. It's beautiful. It's great for your mind. It's also great for your body, and it's even good for the environment. It's also like a time machine in the sense that when you walk, you're extending time. And in the sense that if you drive, if you have a high speed, somehow you're narrowing in time. You're not experiencing anything. You hardly see anything. You don't smell anything. You don't hear anything. While when you walk, the world is opening up. You're extending the time. Walking is a time machine. Maybe I was not that clear on this. So it's kind of like this morning when as I write about in walking, I had to make a choice. I can drive to the city. It will take me maybe, in my case, 12, 13, 14 minutes, depending on traffic and traffic lights. And I can take the metro, which will take me maybe 16, 17, 18 minutes.
Yeah.
Or I can walk, which takes me 32, 35 minutes. And then it's easy to think that I will save time by driving.
Yeah.
And of course, that's mathematically is correct. But life is not about mathematics. Because when I walk, I actually, I see many people. It's great for people watching. I see buildings. I feel the weather. This morning it was raining a little bit. It's refreshing. I'm also kind of slowly moving from my home to my office, kind of changing the attitude. I'm not stressed at all. So in that sense, life feels so much longer when you sometimes move slower. So in that sense also, like when you move slow, life feels long. And when you move very quickly all the time and doing the same things, from day to day, life feels short.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, if you're always in a hurry, to get from point A to B, you're not paying attention to the middle part, right?
Exactly. And and then life feels short, but also it's a huge misunderstanding that everybody says today, I'm so busy. I'm stressed, I'm busy, I'm not able to do everything I'm supposed to do, blah, blah, blah. And, that's mostly, not fully, but mostly, I think, at least a great part based upon a misunderstanding. Because, just an example, young people today will spend around 4 hours every day doing social media. And average age in Norway today is like 84 years or something. And that means that you will spend 13 years of your life, day and night, on social media. And, so no wonder...
13 years.
13 years, yeah. So at least, 84 years in the 4 hours a day. So it's, which again means that, it's no wonder you feel busy.
Yeah.
And no wonder you feel life is short, because you're wasting your time.
Do you consider yourself spiritual in some way? Are some of these attitudes spiritually influenced from something, or philosophically influenced?
Yeah, philosophically for sure. I'm not a philosopher, but I write philosophical about, as you said, about silence and walking, and it also certainly has a spiritual side. I think walking has, it's very meditative, and silence, of course, have, because in the great religions, at least some of them, you will meet God in silence. God doesn't come with thunder or heavy storms and floods. God appears in silence. And if you don't believe in God, at least you will meet yourself in silence. And that's, of course, one of the reasons people avoid silence most of the time, because it is a bit difficult. Noise is about living through your devices and living through other people, while silence is about getting to know yourself. And that, to me, has a spiritual side.
I mean, it's a good time to kind of talk about your book, Silence in the Age of Noise, which I loved. I mean, I think you're the perfect person to talk to about this, because I don't know anybody, or I'd be hard-pressed to find somebody who spent, was it 50 or 55 days?
50 days and nights.
50 days and nights when you did your South Pole expedition. No talking. You weren't in communication with anybody.
No.
I don't think I've gone maybe half a day with not hearing somebody or myself talk. I've never been to a silent retreat or anything, but I'm interested in that. This is a very unique perspective that I don't know how many people in the world you can find to talk to about this that has had that experience for that length of time. What do you hear when you hear silence?
I talk to my kids when they were kids or teenagers.
Yeah.
About silence, and try to kind of explain this to them. And they said, silence is nothing. And of course, that idea is something like also philosophers, I think hardly any philosophers have written about silence. At least not Western philosophers have written about silence. And because, they think silence is nothing. And of course, first year when you study philosophy, you learn nothing comes from nothing. But, that's another misunderstanding, because silence is something. Venture into silence, silence starts to speak to you. Not with words, but, it's like when you're out to nature, which is my experience. I'm sure you can have it other places too, but my experience is that when you're out to nature, even if you don't, you don't have to be like me out there for days and weeks and months by yourself, but only for a few hours without holding a device in your hands. And then, you slowly start to communicate with the environment, with the silence. You're sending some ideas out to get all the thoughts back again. And it's not kind of, a dialogue with words. It's more like experiencing and emotions, ideas. The silence will tell you the truth about the world and about yourself.
Did you feel a difference in your energetic body or something, like having gone so many days in silence, or your connection with nature or something? Like, was there some experience along that way that you've not been able to replicate since then because it was so many days? Or
yeah, but not replicate fully, but somehow you can never,
it's a unique,
every experience is new every time you have it.
Yeah.
So just like with walking, if you and I walk out to this office, and down the street next to each other, your walk will be different from mine.
Right.
But yes, that particular expedition taught me a great lesson on the importance of silence, and how also silence can be your best friend. And also, it's easy to think about silence as, a way to live an even more egocentric life. To me, silence is the opposite. Silence is about seeing the world in a different perspective. It's about opening up. It's about loving the earth and other humans even more. Silence also, taught me to respect other people to a greater extent. It taught me to be more curious about other people.
It's strange how certain ideas just come out of nowhere when you give yourself space for them.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's just by, you doing the dishes at home, you find this inner silence, and suddenly a great idea appear.
It does.
Yeah. From maybe sometimes it feels like it appears from nowhere.
Where is that coming from?
Exactly.
Where do you think that's coming from?
It's already there.
Yeah, okay. You're just giving yourself space for it to, kind of like the Michelangelo carving. Have you heard that? He said that David was already in the marble block. He just had to take away the extra to reveal it.
Exactly. That's I didn't hear exactly. That's how it is. So I think it's at least that's a way to look at it. It's like you're not all the ideas that are coming to you are already there waiting for you.
You said in your TED Talk, quote, "I believe in making life more complicated than it needs to be."
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering why. Some of it sounds conflicting with some of what we're talking about in a way, but I think you meant it in a different way. So I'm just curious if you could talk about that statement.
Yeah, no, I think, it's somehow you have to make your life more difficult than necessary.
Get out of your comfort zone in that way.
But of course, if I was born in the Democratic Republic of Congo, I would probably think differently about it, because then the daily challenges are would be too overwhelming.
Coming at it from a Western perspective.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's also because I'm born in Norway, which is a very privileged society, and if you only choose the most easiest option every day, I think you will live a very dull life. And of course you will also live an unfree life, because it kind of predestined what you're going to do throughout the day. So as a Norwegian, I think it's you wake up in the morning, and throughout the day you should make life slightly more difficult choices than you have to do. Not all the time, of course, but you get up, have breakfast. Are you going to walk to the office? Or are you going to take a car to the office? So you walk to the office, slightly more difficult. And that's how it goes throughout the day, and you will have a richer life. And again, as I said earlier on, your life will feel so much longer. So today I'm 57 years old, so I go to 60th, 70th, 80th birthdays, and people keep on talking about life being short. All these days, weeks and years, they didn't really understand that was life. And that's a bit sad, because, they had this one huge, rich opportunity to live a great life. And then they kind of partly wasted it.
What are some things you're doing now to make life more difficult?
I think, it's a sense that to move by yourself instead of course I drive sometimes, take an airplane, but, try to move physically as much as possible.
Yeah.
Try to spend time in nature. When I read a book, I try to read a kind of a difficult book that kind of challenging for me to get. I try to cook food instead of, pre-ordered, takeaway food.
Right.
Sometimes, I probably should do it more often. Listening to music I find difficult to grasp. I'm trying to work hard, not mainly because I would like to have the money, but because, I find great satisfaction in being a publisher.
Yeah.
To publish great books and try to sell as many of them as possible afterwards. So, it's all this is about making life a little bit more difficult than it has to be.
Yeah, being an entrepreneur is difficult.
Yeah, but also, you walk to the South Pole. Should you do it together with other people? Should you do it with dogs? Should you talk on the radio every evening or telephone every evening? No, you do it by yourself. and not having any communication. And, you know, in one way, that's more difficult. It's more difficult, you know, to walk alone to the South Pole without talking to anyone.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I have to say, every other solo expedition I hear about, I'm sure it's some exceptions, but in general, the person will have a satellite phone with him or her, and they will call back home every evening.
Yeah.
And you will talk to your wife or your husband or boy or girlfriend, and hopefully, you know, they will say, I love you, and you will say, I love you too. And this will be going on days after days, weeks after weeks. And eventually, your partner back home will say, the washing machine broke down today. And, you know, then you might as well just go home. Because all you want on an expedition, at least, is to get away from civilization.
Yeah.
You would like to live a different life. You would like to follow your own path. You would like to focusing on putting one leg in front of the other. You would like to be a part of the nature. And then, you know, if you're going to talk to your partner, you know, it's a nice idea, but, you know, not for me.
Yeah.
So in that sense, to make a more difficult choice was also for me a more enriching, a better choice.
Part of the book's title is In the Age of Noise, so I have to ask you about your advice or maybe what you do to find some silence in this crazy, loud, ever-distracting world that we live in. You know, practically speaking, are there things that you do to give yourself that inner space?
Yes, you know, I think most people in the world underestimate themselves and the possibilities they have in life. Obviously, some are overestimating themselves, but I met thousands of people around the earth, and that's my conclusion.
Yeah.
And they also underestimate themselves in terms of finding inner silence, because, you know, you can't wait for silence to come to you. So somehow you need to invent your own silence, and you need to search for the silence within yourself. When you live in a city like we do, you know, it's always some noise.
Yeah.
So you have to search for your own inner silence, which is a silence which is there all the time waiting for you. And, you know, on a daily basis, when I'm busy with work, family, I find it when I wake up in the morning. I find it when I'm taking a shower. Sometimes when I cook porridge I eat kind of the same breakfast every day as I do on expeditions. I oat porridge. And then, as I said, if I walk to the office, even if on the metro, I can find some inner silence. Yeah. When I get into this office building, I try to walk the stairs to find some, you know, inner silence and to move. And if I'm a bit stressed, sometimes, you know, I try to walk backwards up the stairs, obviously when people don't see me, because then at least I can totally focus on what I'm doing, not thinking about, you know, when you think about the past or you think about the future. And it's nice sometimes not to think, to find this inner silence, just to experience.
Yeah. Hard thing to do, not to think.
Yeah, but, you know, it's kind of, if you walk backwards up the stairs, you have to have a total focus on not falling over.
Yeah.
And then at least you're present in the moment. And then, you know, throughout the whole day. And of course, if you have some great sex, you find some inner silence, and then you find silence again when you cook dinner. And if you do the dishes, you find some inner silence. Maybe you do a little walk or you read a book, you find some inner silence. And then again, you go to bed, you find some inner silence. So, you know, it's not that complicated.
It's not too far away.
But of course, you know, it's, for you who have two small kids, it's more difficult than it is for me. But, you know, it's not impossible. coming
over here, I did exactly that in the metro. I was pretty inspired by the John Cage. Was it Cage or Gage example? Cage, yeah. He's a composer who did a 4-minute and 33-second piece, which was just silence. And I was reading about him on Wikipedia after getting introduced to that piece through your book. And one of the things he said was that, you know, he believed that was one of his most important works, and that everything is music, right? So I loved that this was a piece of music that he said on the subway over here on the T-Bahn. I was thinking, okay, I'm just going to find some inner silence on the way over to meet Erling. And I'm also going to listen to the music that's going on around me, which was, in that case, a lot of kids from Barnahaga on tour. And
it's a great piece. I mean, it's if anyone is curious about it, just look at John Cage 433 at YouTube and see how the whole concert is going on. Stage, full orchestra, nobody's playing. And then you have all this, small, different sounds, noise among the audience. For 4 minutes and 33 seconds. It's a great piece.
You said in the book that silence is the new luxury, and I agree. Like you said, we can find ways to discover it within ourselves, but to find quiet places, out in nature, certainly a possibility, but it's becoming harder and harder, I think, with the smartphones and all of the distractions. And there's a level of intimacy in silence that's easy to avoid, right? Like if you sit in silence with somebody and just make eye contact for 5 minutes, it can feel like a long stretch of time.
Yeah, it's this. I'm writing about the book. This actually a scientific experiment about falling in love, which I think exemplifies it in a great way. If you you go on a date. And you ask some questions about the other person. Of course, everybody likes to speak about themselves. And you're kind of understanding, and the same person asks you kind of the same questions, and you got to talk about yourself, get to know each other a little bit. And then you have to look into the other person's eyes for 5 minutes. In silence. And then the likelihood of you falling in love with the other person is increasing dramatically. So, I actually tried it, and I think it's true.
Yeah, I've done that in a workshop. They called it authentic relating, which is you just, there was people in a circle, and they were facing out, and then a bigger circle, or I guess the same amount of people on the outside circle facing in, and one part of the circle would move, and you would just spend 2 or 3 minutes looking into somebody's eyes, not speaking, then the next person and the next person. And it was really interesting to see.
I haven't heard about this.
How much you could learn from somebody. You could learn from maybe their spirit or their soul or who they were beneath the everyday stuff just by spending 3 minutes looking into their eyes.
I love words, but, we just exaggerate kind of, how far words can get us. It's so many interesting things that are, unsaid and are not, supposed to be expressed by words. That's also why, in a relationship, if you have a partner, at least my experience is that if I need to explain everything to my girlfriend, it's unbearable.
You're like, just look into my eyes for 5 minutes.
Yeah, but somehow, I think, some of the greatest things in life are, beyond words.
Yeah. You can't put words only do the job so much, right? We forget that, I think.
Yeah, of course you can say, I love you, you're beautiful, blah, 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 all the usual stuff. But somehow, you end up on the quoting Barbara Cartland with all those words. So so you need to kind of express it in your own way. Yes.
Yeah. Was it challenging for you? I'm just going to switch gears a little bit to the publishing business that you run, Kagge Forlag. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is one of the more successful publishing companies here in Norway. Was it hard to go from kind of the expeditions and the traveling and the adventuring and things like that to running a business, becoming a businessman, essentially?
I wouldn't say it was hard. I was kind of very open for it. I didn't give up doing outdoors. I just kind of took a long break from expeditions.
Yeah.
And, you need variety in life.
Yeah.
And as I said, you should fulfill your own potential. So I just felt for doing something else. I had to, because my girlfriend got pregnant and I needed an income. And I also needed a different life, and I want to buy a home for my family. And I want an interesting job. So I started this publishing company. And I really like the, combination of intellectual challenges throughout the day with trying to have a commercial mind. So you're able to pay your authors, your employees, and yourself.
Yeah. What has entrepreneurship taught you about yourself?
It's to me, it's kind of, same principles as organizing an expedition. It very much comes down to preparations. I kind of didn't doubt that I had, kind of the intellectual or commercial mind necessary to make a publishing company, create it. But, you learn something every day. And you definitely learn something about your own limitations, which I think is very healthy. But you also learn about other people, you learn about ideas, you learn about literature. Eventually you learn a lot about yourself, because obviously, as it says in Tennyson's Ulysses, we are a part of all that we have met. Publishing is great because every day is new.
What are some of the books that have influenced you the most in your life?
If you have a pet, you have a favorite pet. I had a cat for many years. Unfortunately, she got sick and it's not with us anymore. But that was my favorite animal by far, still is. But, I don't have the same loyalty to literature. Changes quite frequently. But the two first books I remember I read was one biography on Albert Schweitzer, who was, he's forgotten today, but he was a medical doctor, and he was playing the organ. He was playing Bach in Germany, but then he gave up that career and went to Africa to, work as a doctor and make the world a much better place to be. He wanted to change the world. Even a mouse can eat an elephant if you take small portions. So he really made an effort by changing his life to do good and help as many people as possible. And he also had some kind of basic philosophy about, respect for life, deep respect for life, about loving life, which, I read when I was like 10 years old. I was very dyslexic, so it took me a long time to learn how to read. And then I read Papillon. You remember Papillon? About his French prisoners escaping prison, like they sent him to Devil's Island on the northeast coast of South America. He was convicted for murder. French guy. He was sent there, and this book is about his escapes from the prison. Papillon. Fantastic book. It's presented as a non-fiction book. He probably meant a few, details himself, but it's a great book.
Yeah.
And of course, I heavily identified with Papillon. The butterfly in French was his nickname, about how he tried to and eventually succeeded by escaping from prison.
I love that we're surrounded by books right now. It makes me feel
I think,
good.
It's this whole idea that we should have libraries without physical books, because you should have everything online, streaming literature, read it on your book on your device, blah blah blah. Of course it can work sometimes, but the beauty of books and the physicality of books, the design of books, the feeling that you kind of go reading through the books, and I also write notes in the books I read, is beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's why, older people, but also young people today, they love physical books. And, I like streaming too, but, it's I even like it even more when I can actually read a book.
I do love my Kindle for traveling, I must say.
Yeah, exactly. But you see, the market for Kindle is, it's not growing anymore.
No.
But streaming is growing, and it's going to keep on growing. And maybe somehow, a new device is invented, and, even more people, do books online, which as a publisher is great, because, of course, you would like to have a great distribution. But, I think, in 100 years' time, people will still read books on paper.
Oh, yeah. I hope so. I mean, there's something about it. It must be satisfying for you to know, all right, I'm going to publish a book. This thing comes into existence. It's a physical object that you can then hold at a certain point.
Absolutely.
And then that can be shared, and these ideas are shared, and it must be satisfying in that way, knowing you're putting more ideas out into the world. You're known for all these accomplishments, and you've been in a lot of interviews and all the things that we've been talking about today. What are some things, or what is something that most people don't know about you?
It's, I think...
Or are you just an open book, so to speak?
I think every human has this idea that, the whole world only knows me by 10 or 20%, and everything else is even more interesting. And I remember I read this interview when I was a kid by a Norwegian pop star, and he said, people think they know me. He's a super celebrity in Norway,
Yeah.
but they only know 10% of me.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. And of course, that's the thing with everybody, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think, in my case, I think, what I talk about is the most interesting things about myself. It's most of my life is, I would think quite close to many other people's lives. So it's not that interesting to tell. But of course, in general, I live a privileged life because, I walk, I have silence, I have an interesting job, I have kids, I have a girlfriend. So I'm a very lucky guy.
Yeah.
And I think, the secret, if you are as fortunate as me, is to be aware that you are lucky.
Yeah.
Because you see all this, fortunate people, privileged people who are complaining all the time. In Norway, people are complaining more than ever.
Yeah.
So I think, it's just be aware that you are lucky. And I think many people are lucky, but, don't forget it.
Yeah. I think if silence had a best friend, it would probably be gratitude, right?
Gratitude is the thing.
Isn't that the thing that seeps in ultimately?
Yeah, I was actually considering writing an essay book on gratitude because I think that's one of the most underestimated feelings you can have. Schadenfreude, what you call it in English, Schadenfreude. The German, enjoy other people's failures.
Okay.
That's the most stupid feeling you can have, I think. We all have it, but that's something you should try to avoid. While gratitude, I think it's, one of the most beautiful feelings and meaningful, feelings you can have.
Yeah. To me, it's something that just, if I'm taking a long walk, it's this the thing that inevitably kind of comes into silence. It is a beautiful thing. Let's talk about writing really quick. You've written many books. How do you like the writing process? What do you like about it?
I like it because it's difficult.
You like difficult things. That's true, yeah.
And to write well is super difficult. And I also like it because when I write a book like Walking in Silence, I feel that I have something really important to say.
Yeah.
And I'm not thinking I'm writing something totally new, but I put things into a different perspective because I use my own experiences.
Mm-hmm.
That makes it great to write.
Yeah.
And then again, it's really tiring to write. It's very time consuming. And all of my books, also my next book, Philosophy for Polar Explorers, they all, they're very thin books. But, I spent a year and a half or something to write those few words.
Yeah. It's so time intensive. There's nothing worse than when you sit down to the blank screen and you can't really get it going.
Yeah.
That's me every time I sit down to write.
If you then check your phone on, etc.
Right.
You're gone.
You're done. You're done. What is something that you're scared of?
On a daily basis, nothing.
Yeah. Now we sit in silence. It was
to be scared is one thing. I'm always worried about things. I said, I was worried about my daughter's well-being. I'm always worried about my business because I have a huge responsibility for employees, authors, everybody relates to the company.
Yep.
I'm always worried when I'm dealing with my art collection. I collect contemporary art. I'm always worried about something, but to be scared, that's not a great feeling because that kind of makes you irrational. You don't think that clearly. So I think of course you can be scared about things, but it's not a great thing to be scared, I think.
Maybe different than worrying, like you said.
I think worry is kind of you should be worried.
Yeah.
There's many things to be worried about.
Keeps you on the edge, right?
I feel, it's on a bigger base, scale. I'm worried about how nuclear bombs are having a revival in the world. I think that's super worrying. To me, it's even, you're worried about climate change for sure. But to me, it's, this whole idea that you had short-range nuclear bombs, that industry is growing. But it's hard to have more than one great worry in your head at a time.
There's many things to worry about, right?
Exactly.
All the time.
So to me, I think this whole what's happening now from a Norwegian perspective is start of the Russia starting again to develop and start to prepare short range nuclear missiles. That's very worrying.
Yeah. Before I let you go, just a couple more things. What attracted you to collecting art? I mean, there's a lot of things you can collect, right? You can collect record albums, you can collect...
Yeah, but it's difficult. I collect cutting edge contemporary art, which is super difficult because art historians haven't really agreed if it's great art or not, or if the artist is great. And I really like that, to go, search into the kind of most unexplored end of the art world. The art that was made yesterday or last month.
How do you know when it's time to move on from something, whether it's like a book's finished, like you were going to transition your life to owning a business, or maybe it's something that you've worked on for a while and now you're giving it up? How do you know when it's time to...
You don't really know. I think as an explorer, I learned the hard way. Nobody knows anything for sure. And it's again about, it can be rational about it, but it's more like about, as with feelings. As I said earlier,
intuition, you mean? Or
intuition, but intuition based upon some knowledge and experiences. But it's on those matters, I try to avoid to think too much.
Yeah.
Again, because thinking is quite often overrated. Not all the time, of course, but I'm more into experiencing, kind of feeling what's going on, and quite often I'm not making a great decision. I just kind of slowly move on and try to follow my own path. Svamarga, as they say in Sanskrit. You should follow your own path.
I love those words that encapsulate like a whole sentence or idea.
Yeah.
It's like one word and it
exactly.
just
And
means
that's
a whole bunch of
then
stuff.
Sanskrit, I only know a few words, but my old friend Arne Næss, the philosopher, who has been very, very important in my life, and also use in my books, because I had this idea I should, try to have a little renaissance for the philosopher Arne Næss, because he was really one of the great philosophers, I think, in his time. And he used a lot of Sanskrit to express his ideas more like universal ideas. And he also tried to, make me learn some Sanskrit so we could have a dialogue in Sanskrit. But talking about making life difficult was too difficult for me.
Do you have a favorite word like that that's just represents a whole idea or something?
Not a favorite, but kind of a word, as I remember now, like gata in Sanskrit. Gata, it's means walking in Sanskrit.
Yeah.
Gå, which is a very similar word in Norwegian, means walking too. In Sanskrit, it not only means walking, but it also means getting to know, getting to understand.
Yeah.
So, that again is reflected in the language. If we're going to explore the world, you need to move physically. You need to kind of really feel what you are exploring. Of course, you could do it on a computer too, but traditionally, for the last 300,000 years, exploration has been about moving, doing things physically.
I love that. My favorite word like that in Norwegian that's totally non-philosophical on the practical side, pålegg. Because it's just like anything you can put on top of a bread. Like, this is pålegg. I'm just going to throw this on top of this bread. This is fantastic.
And all this pålegg almost, what you put on the bread that you buy in the supermarket almost tastes the same, I think. If you buy some salami or if you buy strawberry jam, it almost tastes the same.
Just anything on the table can be pålegg. There you go. Throw it on some bread. That's great.
I actually have to admit I'm eating mostly, I make a lot of, I make my own jam.
Yeah, I do.
And it's very, very simple and it tastes beautiful.
Yeah.
Because all this jam you buy in the store, it's mostly
Not a fan.
Not a fan, and as I said, if it tastes like, it's salami, if it tastes like blueberries, it's jam, it tastes the same.
Yeah.
It's like, exclusive cognacs. Actually, with my girlfriend yesterday, we had a glass of whiskey, and I said, I really like this whiskey because, it tastes like liquor.
Yeah.
And quite often now, it's liquor doesn't taste like liquor anymore. It's so much. Okay, no, I'm talking about something I don't know much
No,
about.
that's okay. I mean, like a flavor, like it'd be like a
the
blueberry,
flavor,
drink a
exactly.
blueberry
The
whiskey or something.
Thing is like, everything is so perfumed.
Right.
And, made for you to like it.
Yeah.
And not giving you any resistance. Everything should be sweet and aroma, and that's not to me.
Yeah. For whiskey, it took me a while to appreciate.
Liquor,
to get past the burn, and then you're like, wait a minute.
Whiskey should also have, taste a little bit awful. It should be rough on you. It should not to be too smooth.
That's Scotch for me. I prefer bourbon. Scotch is a little
yeah, exactly.
Too
bourbon. Yankees like bourbon.
Yeah, we do. That's true. Well, you go to America quite often, don't you?
Yeah. But not to drink bourbon.
No,
but
is that for work? You go.
Yeah, but I'm not separating work and other stuff. To me, it's lifestyle. So if I go to the States, I talk about my books. I meet some publishers. I'm my own publisher for sure. If it's New York, I do some outdoors, at least some hiking, some exploration. I meet hopefully some interesting people, eat some great food, drink some interesting stuff. Yeah.
Do you have some spots around the world that you feel at home in when you go? In the same way that almost that you feel?
They say, I think Daniel Defoe, he wrote that if you have money in your pocket, you are at home anywhere. And it's a good attitude, I think. You don't even need money in your pocket if you're, out in nature. But in the city, it's sure nice to have. But then I think, you can be at home anywhere. It's an attitude thing.
Yeah. Last question. What would be your advice to somebody that's listening to this and maybe they're, thinking about traveling or getting out there and exploring or maybe even doing some kind of expedition that may be, something that's out of their comfort zone, even if it's not, they're the first person to do X, Y, or Z. What kind of advice do you share?
You should do it.
Simple as that.
I think it's, as I said, it's so easy to underestimate yourself and the possibilities in your life. And I remember Arne Næss, the philosopher I mentioned, he was asked again and again by people, how should I, do my life? How should I prioritize things? What should I do to have a meaningful life? And he said in Norwegian, "Stå på," which in English kind of translates into, get your act together and try to do some of the stuff you're dreaming about doing.
Yeah. And I'm going to throw out a challenge to everybody listening to spend some time in silence today. Maybe something like if you usually take your phone out while you're on your commute or something, like don't take it out. Maybe something like that. Or spend a few minutes staring into your partner's eyes.
Yeah, it's really strange how 5 minutes can do a big difference.
Yeah. So the book again is Silence in the Age of Noise. And do you have a website or anything you want to share, or just find it where books are?
I'm not big on web. It's I'm not anti-technology, but I'm not big on it. So it's I think everything I can say that makes sense, you will find in my books.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. When I'm in person, I usually like to high five it out, if you don't mind. Yeah. That was so fun. Thanks again.
Super duper. God tur.
There you have it. Thank you so much to Erling for letting me stop by his headquarters, the publishing company's HQ, sit in that incredible room full of books. By the way, if you want to see a picture of us together, you can always go on zerototravel.com. You can find all the shows there, the archives, and other juicy travel information for you. If you haven't signed up yet over at zerototravel.com, sign up for the email list. We got some exciting workshops coming up, online gatherings, different things that you will not hear about if you're just listening to the podcast that you have to be on the email list for. So I love to keep in touch with the community there. And thank you for being a part of this listening community, my friend. It's always an honor that people download this podcast and listen to it, and still blows me away to this day. And this is a community-powered show, 10,000%. I'm here for you. So if you ever have any suggestions, you want to share any advice or guest recommendations, or you just want to share your story, you can always drop me a line. Jason@zerototravel.com is my email address. I'm going to give a shout out to somebody in the community before I let you go. This is a kind review I got from Marina, the Trader Chick, she calls herself, in air quotes. She said, I love how they don't just take one segment of travel and run with it. There's a little bit of something for people interested in different things like quick vacations, long-term travel, becoming an expat, etc. It's super entertaining to hear what they have to say and to compare it to previous experiences. So thank you. And Clarissa Gomez, who said, awesome podcast. Jason hosted the Zero Travel Podcast, highlights all aspects of travel, nomad life, and more in this can't-miss podcast. Thank you. Hosts and guests offer insightful advice and information that's helpful to anyone that listens. So there was another one before that said weekly travel fix. That was a nice headline. So, hey, I might be hinting at a little something here. If you like this podcast and you haven't left me a review yet, every once in a while it's nice to ask for one of those. I'm not pushing it on you. I'm not saying you have to do it, but when I go to record this thing and I'm kind of going through the feed and doing podcast work, it sure is nice to get those reviews from the community or any emails as well. If you have the time and inclination and if you enjoyed the show, go ahead and do that. You'll be making my day. And I hope this show today made your day or made a part of your day that much better. What a pleasure to bring you this conversation. I had so much fun and continuing to just feel so much gratitude. And today I'm going to take a little walk in silence. I hope you do the same. Now, I am going to leave you with a quote from Erling, our guest today. It's about silence, of course. He said, I believe it's possible for everyone to discover this silence within themselves. It is there all the time, even when we are surrounded by constant noise. Deep down in the ocean, below the waves and ripples, you can find your internal silence. Standing in the shower, letting the water wash over your head, sitting in front of a crackling fire, swimming across a forest lake, or taking a walk over a field. All these can be experiences of perfect stillness too. I love that. I also love that quote. So I'll leave you with that. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy some silence, and I will see you next time. Cheers, my friend.
This podcast has been brought to you by ZeroToTravel.com. Ideas and advice to make your travel dreams